Welcome to Office Hours. Whether you're new to the acupuncture profession or have been at it for decades, this is the place where we discuss all things Chinese medicine and more. Join Toby Daly, a seasoned acupuncturist of the Som tradition, and Angelique Britt, a nurse turned acupuncturist who is brand new to the field, as they explore topics in and around the world of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. There's something for everyone here. Drop in anytime.
Hi, Sharon. Welcome to our show, Office Hours. Thanks so much for coming.
I'm so happy to be here.
All right. Would you mind giving people a little bit of your background? I think a lot of people will be familiar with your work, but just on the off chance they aren't, do you mind giving a little bit of your background so people have some context for our discussion going forward?
Yeah. So I graduated from acupuncture school in 1983,
Mm.
um, and pretty much the same school that you went to, Angelique. And um, so I've been practicing a little over 40 years. I learned herbal medicine a little bit later because there wasn't an herb program in my school, but I became very um, entranced with Chinese herbal medicine to a really deep degree, and um, went to China, studied there with a woman who is a gynecologist and obstetrician. She has since passed away,
Mm.
Dr. Cho Mei, and um, and then came back and started teaching. I taught at the Northwest Institute of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine for a few years and began to run some of my own programs. And now I've taught the graduate mentorship program now about 20 times
Mm.
Wow.
over the years, and it's evolved. During that time, I also really fell in love with classical formulas and the Shanghanlun. I went to China to study with Dr. Huang and invited teachers here to study with Dr. Fu Yanling and Feng Shilun. And Huang came several times to the White Pine Institute. Um, and so now I think it's been maybe 20 years that I've been practicing and studying classical formulas. And that's really influenced my 2-year program, the graduate mentorship program. And so I live out here in Western Massachusetts, where it's very cold right now,
Mhm.
on a small farm with my daughter, who's been a farmer here for about 8 years, and horses and goats and sheep. Um, yeah, and still am in love with Chinese medicine. I guess another thing is that I've become a translator over time, translated a lot of material that I mostly use for my students, creating ebooks for them about doctors' experiences with the different herb formulas.
I think that's great for context for everybody. Is there a part of Chinese medicine that you're especially interested in right now?
I think what's evolved for me over time, and just deepened, especially as my Chinese language skills improve and I'm able to read more of the classical texts. What really interests me is what happens in our bodies and the circular dynamics of the universe, the rotation of the earth, the movement of the earth around the sun, the relationship with the moon, and then the way that the Shanghan Lun is, well, let me just go back. The way that our pathology is can be seen through a lens of lack of alignment with these movements. And that the Shanghanlun, the symptoms that are discussed in the Shanghanlun clauses are, you can look at it through this lens, which I think is a Huangdi Neijing kind of lens, that the symptoms that come up in the various conformations are showing the way that the patient is misaligned with those movements of heaven. And in the herbal form, them as just supplementing the chi or moving the blood or expelling an evil, they're reestablishing alignment. Like we're able to diagnose how the person is misaligned and um, and then give the herbs that will establish alignment. And for me, the idea of this is really kind of profound, because what it means is that there's a natural, constant flow of vitality that's coming into us from the universe, flowing through us, that we can be aligned to. And it's this energy that knows how to heal us. And that
Mm.
whether it's with our acupuncture or our herbs, that we're not um sort of just going in and causing the healing. We're just adjusting the person so that this natural function of healing can occur.
Mm-hmm.
um so it's a slightly different mindset than going in to get rid of wind cold, to find the pathogen and get it out of there. um, from this perspective, our bodies naturally know how to get rid of pathogens. In fact, we're permeable. We're constantly taking things in and processing them, and having them go out. Like, our bodies are machines that know how to process things from the outside. And so the symptoms that show up are not necessary, or it can be seen, instead of seeing it through the lens of where's the pathogen and how do I get rid of it, you can look at it through the lens of what's not functioning properly to get rid of this pathogen, and how can I reestablish this natural function to process things that come in from the outside.
Mm.
So, like during COVID, that was a lot of how I was working, and my students and TAs were also working that way. And it was great, because we're if we're reestablishing function, then the person ends up being healthier afterwards than they might have
Mm.
been before,
Mm-hmm.
So
Can you give me an example of that, like a COVID patient that came that using that framework to treatment,
yeah.
if something comes to mind?
So if you think about the function of Taiyang, the function of Taiyang is sort of to go up and out and resolve the surface, right? And I call the six conformations the six great sweeping motions, because they're
Mm.
these motions in the body as opposed to just a channel or a location. So the Taiyang motion is up and out. And the next motion, according to the Neijing, and also the order that the Shanghangun is written in, is Yang Ming, which goes down and in, and it also corresponds to um like if you're following the sun, the Taiyang actually means sun, it's the sun coming up, and once it reaches its zenith, then the yang starts descending, and that's the Yang Ming of the West. It starts descending in the West. And so um if Yang Ming gets blocked in some way, then if you think about what would happen if the sun got blocked at high noon, things start getting really hot, right? And so the heat of Yang Ming is, from this perspective, isn't like a hot pathogen that got in. It's a block in the Yang Ming, and it
Mm.
has to be unblocked so that the natural life force can descend in the body.
Mm.
So I'm thinking, that's just some background, but I'm thinking of a patient who was a Mashing Shurgantong pattern. And what is a Mashing Shurgantong pattern? It's where the surface can't fully resolve, like in a Ma Huangtong pattern. The surface is blocked. So the life force is coming up and zenithing, and it gets blocked from going out. In a Ma Huangtong pattern, you open it up so it can complete. But easily that pattern, the yang gets blocked. Like, it has to keep circulating, and if it gets blocked, it becomes um, a Yang Ming block. So that's what this patient had. And so the exterior was still not resolved, and it was starting to get hot. So they're starting to have panting and pain in the chest,
Mm.
as well as one of the signs for me, whether it's still on the exterior, like with Mashing Shirgantang, it's on the exterior, but it's going interior, right?
Mm,
It's in both. So the sign that it's still on the exterior, one of the key signs is that you still have this feeling of coming down with something. It's
mm,
very, it's a very obvious to the patient feeling, but it's hard to pinpoint as a symptom,
Mhm.
right? Like we all know the feeling of coming down with something. Um, like, how do you pinpoint exactly what your experience is? So the feeling of this person had the feeling of coming down with something, and it was moving into the chest. So there was starting to be panting, and the increase in more heat than cold, um, and uh, um, and they were sweating more, but it wasn't
mm,
resolving.
mm,
So that is right there, the Mashing Shirgantang pattern. So that, and Mashing Shirgantang, oh my God, when you give that formula and it's that pattern, it really within 5 minutes, there's huge relief. It
mm,
just feels, you feel so much better. And so from my way of looking at it, the reason why the Mashing Shirgantang pattern even showed up was because that pattern was there before the COVID. That
mm,
the Taiyang surface and the Yangming weren't functioning well, and so when the virus comes in, that's the part it's showing me, this is what doesn't function well, and can't process this virus. So let's you don't even know it's not functioning well until it's asked to do something
mm,
Mhm.
that it's not capable of handling. And the signs and symptoms show me what function needs help. So from my mind, I'm like benefiting the Taiyang function, and also with the Shurgao opening the Yangming so the Yang can descend and
mm.
go along its natural way. Um, so I'm not getting rid of a hot pathogen. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really clear for me, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, again, I how I think of mashing shirgantan is, yeah, you've got heat, you want to discharge it, resolve it, transform or something like that. But for you just want to keep that cycle going. And that
Right,
cycle's stuck there. The sun's fixed in the sky and it's got to descend, otherwise everything's going to fry. Hmm.
right,
All
right.
right.
And our bodies are constantly functioning relative to the movements of the celestial bodies. Just like, at night we get tired because our
Mm,
yang is descending with the sun. And so if my body is going too slow, like the yang ming is not going down at the pace that it should, then I get symptoms. So that kind of explains that idea of alignment with, I call it being right with time.
mm.
Yeah.
I can really see that in my mind. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course these ideas are not mine. Like I'm very interested in other um doctors and practitioners who have written about this, and I'm translating material about that doctors have written that look through this lens, kind of that Neijing lens. I mean, the Neijing is really a book about physiology. The Su Wen especially is a book about physiology, but it all has to do with being in alignment with the movements of the celestial bodies.
Mm.
Endlessly
Yeah,
fascinating stuff.
yeah,
Endlessly.
it
Yeah.
is to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, you guys are little uh, Chinese medicinophiles too.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
I'm curious because I'm coming up on 1 year of practice. And so to hear you say you've been doing it for 40 is like, wow, will I ever get there? One of the things that I remember hearing you say in a lecture, which I think is important for people who listen to hear more about, is that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in my paraphrasing, but that we have a couple of jobs when we're in clinic, and one of them is to see clearly, and the other is to enjoy being ourselves. Did I get it
Mm.
right?
I think I say that maybe your only job in the clinic is to enjoy being yourself.
Okay. Can you
Yeah.
speak more to that for the folks that are especially newer? Because I think that, I don't know. I mean, you both could probably answer better, but I know for new people, you want to do well so much. You want to do the best you can do for your patients. And sometimes I think we
Yeah,
can lose sight of ourselves in that. And so,
yeah.
yeah, if you could say more about
Well,
that.
I think what I found for myself, and then as a teacher, what I have found that's a big impediment for clinic going well is um, that we all have a lot of conditioning and voices that we hear in our heads.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not very good at this. I'll never figure this out. I'm in over my head. I mean, all of us have all kinds of voices going on all the time about ourselves. And
Sure.
I'm not very good at Chinese medicine. I have ADD. I can't study very well, or, voices like that. And so uh, through my personal work, finding a space, and this does have to do with the circular dynamics of the universe, because the vitality that's always coming into us, that's kind of running our bodies, in my experience and through my practice, I experience that vitality as loving and affectionate. And so when those voices are quiet, when they're not running the show, and I would call them voices of conditioning, and they tell us things that are useless and not true, things that are not helpful, not true. And and when those voices are not present, and we experience an affection for ourselves, kind of ordinary affection for ourselves, that we have so much wisdom and so much connection. And I worked actually with literally hundreds of students working. There's a process that I would help the students go through, that I stopped doing now, but I did for a long time. And we would kind of go into a clinical situation that was difficult for them, and the student would feel what it felt like in their body when the voice came in that said, you're no good at this, and what happened to their sense of connection with the patient. And inevitably, it would feel terrible in the body. They would get confused and disoriented, and also feel more separate from the patient. And then we would do another exercise where it was absolutely impossible for those voices to come into the room, and just kind of quietly spend time, like, what do you notice if those voices are completely absent? And inevitably, what would come up would be they would feel an affection for the patient. They would feel curious about what's going on. And if there was a question like, can you think of something that might help the patient? Yeah, I can think of things, and sort of this natural curiosity, this natural warmth, this natural wisdom comes through in the absence of those conditioned voices. So when I say, like, your only job is to enjoy being yourself, or maybe I should say, like, your first job, it's really finding that affection for yourself, that deep affection, because in my experience, the only way to work with those voices, like, you can waste your time arguing with them, but
Hmm.
it doesn't work.
Hmm.
And you can let them beat you down and make you work harder or something like that, but that's exhausting.
Yes.
That the only thing that quiets them down is really connecting with a deep affection for oneself. And I I think every student I've ever worked with this process that I developed through my own experience, they find that place within themselves that was their initial motivation to even study Chinese medicine.
Hmm.
Like, there's a natural compassion that is just there in every student, and for people to find curiosity, that compassion. Like so many practitioners feel so bad about themselves, and it makes it hard to learn
Yeah.
when you are feeling bad about yourself. So for my students, it was really great to work through some of that so that there weren't all these voices all the time telling them you'll never get this,
Mm-hmm.
um, that kind of thing. And that we were these beautiful beings that are naturally compassionate. We don't have to try to be compassionate. It's our true nature to be compassionate. And we can experience that and find it and live it when we allow that affection to come through, the affection of the universe to come through. It quiets the voices. So it's not a frivolous thing. When I say like your only job is to enjoy yourself, it's not like, oh, you're just there to have fun,
Yeah.
on a superficial level. It's really, it's a deep practice, I think,
Mm-hmm.
too. And it's really the question like, well, who am I really? And those voices that come in, that's not who we are,
Mm-hmm.
at all. It has nothing to do with who we really are. And so our practice as practitioners can also be a very deep spiritual practice, because we can practice this in clinic, day by day, and it evolves us. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's progressive.
It is a practice. It's something that I remembered, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And I try to practice it when I'm there to really both enjoy in the fun way, but also to have that compassion and affection for myself that you're describing in the moment, especially being so new and, earnest in a
Hmm.
lot of ways.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. You're new, and you might think like, oh, I don't know very much, or oh, that treatment didn't work. I'm not very good at this.
Oh,
But
yeah.
what you're bringing is so powerful, and it's easy to lose sight of the that impulse, that motivation, the heart that you're bringing, the desire to be beneficial to human beings. And you have skills,
Hmm.
and your skills will develop over time, but they're really good now, that you can think of things every day to do that will help your patients,
Hmm.
and that will just grow. Yeah.
That's the exciting part is
Yeah.
watching it grow. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, thanks for
That's a
that.
nice reminder too that it's already inside us, right? It reminds me of that Chinese parable. You don't have to pull the grass up; it just grows on its own, right? We have that heart, we have that compassion. It can just come on its own.
Yes, that's exactly right. But we can thwart our relationship to it.
We
You
can cut the
know,
grass.
we can cut the grass, right? But yeah. Yeah, thanks for asking that question. That is
Uh,
important.
Sharon, I was going to ask you if you remember what it felt like when you first got exposed to the Psalm system. Angelique and I, we talk about Chinese medicine in general, but the Psalm system in particular on our show here. So I wonder
Mm,
if you can remember what that was like when you first got exposed to it.
yeah, it was kind of mind-blowing for me.
Mm,
Um, and like I think first I can't remember if I heard your podcast or if I read your article, but all that was around the same time. And the article was great. It's great. I've given it to so many people and reread it many times. Um, and what really kind of blew my mind was actually the relationship of that to the principles expressed in the Neijing, and the relationship, especially with the sixth chi. That really blew my mind, um, because it was the first time, like in the Neijing, the six chi are physiological. They are actually what create the five phases of birth, growth, development, decline, and completion. I sort of knew that from the Neijing, and that these six chi come into our bodies and nourish us and create us, but I didn't have such a direct experience of the six chi, or a form of acupuncture that I'd ever heard of that worked with the six chi.
mm,
So then, working with some, I experience like week after week the actuality of the six chi and the relationship with the channels. Like the channels in the body are the pathways in which the six chi come into the body. So very, very directly, if somebody is, lost their relationship with dryness, for example, and so they're damp, and then you supplement large intestine, they dry up during the treatment, like you're literally bringing dryness into their body, or warmth, or cold, it like, or ministerial fire. Like I think about that ministerial fire, that gallbladder chi, and just patients that I have had that were so upright after the treatment, and they would go and quit their job that they had been miserable in, and they like it was so stunning to see those six chi. It felt so good, like I got to, like, diagnose the best I could. I think that's the difficult part, is
Yeah.
diagnosing accurately. But sometimes it was quite clear, those patients where it's just so clear what you need to do, and the results were so clear, and it feels really fun to sort of have that. For me, it's like that relationship with the universe. Like I'm supplementing your large intestine channel, and what that meant to me is I'm making that channel function to bring in dryness that you've lost your relationship with. And now we've reestablished that relationship, and your body functions so much better. So that's what really excited me about Psalm,
Hmm.
I
you
was really
know.
thinking too, especially with your couple decades of experience, especially with the Shanghan Lun, right? So much work with the Liu Jing, and then yeah, you can suddenly apply that to acupuncture. Yeah, that must have been really rewarding.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, it really, really excited me, as you know, because then I invited you to come here, and
That's true.
you know, um, yeah. Um, yeah, so thank you, Toby.
Yeah, thanks so much for recounting that. I was always wondering what was happening in your mind then, so that's nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think I missed, like, previously I had done a lot of palpation,
Hmm.
and I had studied with Kiko Matsumoto and Japanese styles of acupuncture, and so with palpation, really looking for points that changed the pathological findings directly, in and kind of instantly. You poke here and it hurts, and when you find the right point, it feels better. Like, you can feel that things are opening up, and that also felt really direct to me. Like, um maybe it's like what you were asking me, Angelique, about, like, how clarity is really important, and like being able to get feedback from the body, which we do in some as well. So I've now shifted and am primarily using palpation, which I kind of wanted to integrate that back into my work, because with I think it was 3 years I only did some, because I wanted to really learn it, and so whatever you can learn in 3 years, but I missed the palpation, so I've been integrating that back into my practice now.
What does it look
Yeah.
like?
So I palpate areas where it's easy to find out if there's a problem or not.
Mm.
So the channels on the thighs, the inside and the outside of the thighs, so the spleen, liver, kidney, the stomach, gallbladder, and bladder channels on the thighs are really easy to palpate and
Mm.
tell if there's problems, mostly through the person feeling discomfort in those channels. But also you can feel, if it's very tight. And also the groin, like right at the top of the thighs is often really jumpy for people. Um, and then the abdomen, of course, looking at various areas of the abdomen, finding just getting a baseline, like what's going on, and finding where the painful areas are, the center of the chest, the alarm points, and also the SCM. So I kind of get a sense of, okay, where are all their painful points? And then what I want to do, because then I also studied with Thomas Sorensen, who was doing some, and then he shifted, and so now I'm actually only using one acupuncture point per session, and
Wow.
I'm looking for a point that will clear everything. I want everything to go away. And so there's a system for sort of looking for that point. And I also have found that, there are different ways to find a point, and I don't think there's only one point that can do that. But some is really useful, and especially the mother point of the deficient organ, is um, sometimes incredibly powerful to change everything. I'm also looking, like, if somebody has pain at the time, or some problem like, oh, my eyes are really dry, or my shoulder hurts. Like, I want the needle to take care of that too. So I've really liked that. I
Mm.
really like it. And so there's different ways to find the point, but some is one of those ways,
Mm.
that if somebody, it's really clear their pericardium is deficient, you know, using the mother point on the channel that needs supplementing can often take care of everything.
You
That's
you
sort
start
of,
off with one point, and then if it doesn't clear everything, you go to a second point, or you look for another one point.
I look for the point through palpation,
Uh-huh.
and I don't needle until I find a point that clears
Uh-huh.
everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Thomas Sorensen uses only one point, but he does it with a um, and that's cool. I really like needles. I just feel like I'm connecting in a way, but it was amazing to shadow him and to see patient after patient. Gets incredible results in just one point with rotation. It's very efficient time
Yeah.
wise too.
And no sharps
Yeah.
container.
Right.
He no sharps container. He doesn't have one. I think actually he does. Every now and then he'll use a needle for some reason, but I actually didn't see him using needles at all.
That's amazing. Yes, so many different avenues to help patients. That's amazing. I don't think I ever heard of that.
Mhm.
One needle only with the tation and then resolve everything. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I should say also that I've studied with Slate Burris.
Hmm.
He does something called neoclassical acupuncture, and that has also really influenced me. So I just want to give a shout out to my teachers. Thomas is like amazingly perceptive with his hands and just his being. So he can sort of lightly palpate the abdomen and the pulse and then know what to do. And it's too subtle for me.
Mhm.
Like I mean, maybe if I had another lifetime, I could develop it, but I really like things that are more obvious. Like, oh, it hurts when I press here.
Yeah.
Where I really get undoubtable feedback. I worry that I would gaslight myself, like, oh, this, and and, um, and so Slate's style is also more physical. Like, I think some of us are more physical and earthy, and some are more ethereal. And we each have to find our what resonates, what our path is. And it's so cool that there are so many ways to go.
Yeah. I think it's important that, we go through the standard education, but then finding what lights you up inside and following that and then applying that to your clinical practice. Because I think the more excited and interested and, vibrationally aligned you are with what you're doing, I think the better it works. The
Oh,
more
yeah.
excited you are. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm so happy about things like Psalm, and where the the classics are really coming through much more than like when I went to school. And it just feels like the world of acupuncture has gotten so rich.
Yes.
And you've been a big part of that, Toby.
Yeah, thanks for saying that.
Yeah. Well, really, I think you kind of changed the face of acupuncture significantly
Uh,
in this country anyway. Yeah.
that seems amazing to hear, but okay.
Your teacher would be so proud.
Uh,
Yes.
yeah, he could foresee all this, but not me, and so
I
it's
bet
weird
I'm
to
sure he could. I was just thinking that. Like
it's
when you
weird to
were
be in
sick
it.
and he treated you, he was like, this is the guy.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, what a journey.
Mm.
You have another question before I ask my translation question, Toby? I
No,
think you've got
I
some
think
cooler questions. I just want to be respectful of
I've got
time.
several more questions, but why don't you ask one and then I'll ask one more
Well,
if
mine's
it's
kind of,
okay with
it's
Sharon.
a bigger question.
What's
Just in
that?
terms of, it's just a bigger question. So you can choose. How about that? We'll give you the option because you can always cut it. But I'm curious how you began your study of reading the medical classical Chinese, and if one were to want to pursue that as an avenue, like what you would recommend to somebody who.
Oh, yeah. Well, I went to China in 1990. And I had studied a little bit, we live in a college area, and I had
Mm,
audited classes. And then when I went in 1990 to Hangzhou, I also studied at the university there. But also, I was so excited by my teacher's work in gynecology and obstetrics. And I got a copy of her book, and I couldn't read it. Like I knew like standard ni hao and like just basic colloquial Chinese, but medical Chinese not so much. Then when I was living in China, I fell pregnant and came back to the States. And when I was pregnant, I started just I had a dictionary, and I wanted to find out what's in this book. So I just started using a dictionary, and I translated the table of contents using a dictionary. It took forever to just translate the table of contents. And so I really was translating because I couldn't read it. So I was only translating to read it, not to translate it to publish it or something like that. Just
sure.
wanted to read her book. And that was great because now there are so many translation tools. Like then Wenlin came along, and then Pleco, and but using a dictionary, you really learn. Like you look up a character and then you find it again and you don't remember what it was, and you have to go and count the strokes and look in and you learn characters by using a dictionary, where if you can just hover over it with your mouse and the whole definition comes up, it's harder to learn.
Mm,
You don't remember the characters in the same way. So once Wenlin came out, which was many, many years later, my character knowledge stopped increasing as much.
that makes sense.
But so what I would recommend, like it's exciting, and we have now a translation group in the White Pine Circle, and um, and we'll probably be having more classes for beginners to just start, find a case study and just start translating it with the help of other people.
Mhm.
And slowly you'll just develop, the grammar will start to come, and you'll recognize, so now like most modern Chinese texts, I can pretty much just read them, but the classical is something totally different. um, but really, really fun. And I'm in a class now. I've studied a bunch in different classes of classical Chinese, and we have one now on White Pine Circle where we're working on translations, and I'm doing a collaborative translation of the fifth chapter of the Ling Shu, which is just an incredible thing. I've just learned so much with the help of our teacher in how to do that. And hopefully we'll finish it. It'll have lots and lots of commentary because you kind of can't do it without the commentary. Anyway, I would say just jump in because you would have access to so much in a
Mm.
relatively short amount of time,
Okay.
especially someone like you who's so smart.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
Sharon, tell her how frustrating it was, like to look, try and find a character and spend an hour on one character and then still not know what it was. Because she needs to appreciate that when she can just click and hover over things.
Oh,
Uh, it was so frustrating, Angelique. You would spend an hour trying to do one character, and then at the end of the hour, still have not figured it out. So it
yeah.
was,
Yeah,
whew,
and the dictionaries that were available, it was so limited, there's so many
Matthews.
dictionaries. Yeah, yeah, what was it? Like just this little dictionary. It was what I looked up everything in, but they're like medical dictionaries and historical dictionaries and all kinds of stuff. It's so rich now, but this was just like very laborious. And you have to take some calligraphy classes
Mm,
Oh,
because if you don't know how to draw the
right.
characters, you can't count the strokes.
oh,
Say, for example, like a box, you might think, oh, that's four strokes, right? But it's not. It's one, two, three,
uh,
and so if you don't know calligraphy, you can't tell how many strokes are in that character. But that's fun to take calligraphy.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to do calligraphy, but you do have to draw a lot of characters to learn the correct stroke order, and that's
sure.
really important to be able to look up character, or used to be important.
Nice. Okay. All good things. And the things that you don't know. Like who knew you had to count strokes? I didn't. So good to
Well,
know.
we'll have some beginning classes too, and
Great.
maybe you can take one and just like, I think if you feel like, how if you've never knit and then you like, oh my God, I made a scarf, it wasn't that hard, and if you translate a few case studies in a little class, you'll be like, oh my God, look what I could do.
Yeah,
And it's inspiring.
could appreciate that. I'll supplement my pericardium before starting to try.
But it's motivating, right? Because I mean, you want that information. So
Sure.
that's it's not just for fun or just to learn another language for just for intellectual entertainment, right? It's like, oh, I can really help my patients if I can get this out, so it's really motivating.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thanks.
That's how I felt.
All right, Sharon, can I ask you one more question?
Of course.
All right. What role do you think non-disclosure agreements should have in the teaching of Chinese medicine?
Hmm. Um, I would say no role. Like you can't actually own knowledge. Like, so if like as a teacher, I don't own any of the knowledge that I'm teaching my students. So an NDA would be unenforceable because I couldn't say you can't share this information because that's not legal. You can't
Right.
own knowledge. So an NDA, I don't think there should ever be an NDA. And, sometimes I know there are NDAs, but my experience is they get shown to be actually a form of coercion towards the
Mm,
Mm,
students to
mm,
try to control students and control knowledge and to control competition.
mm.
And so, are they even ethical? Since they are since you can't own knowledge, is an NDA even ethical?
Mm.
On the other hand, what I do think, as a teacher, what I do is I ask my students not to share, um, not to copy what I'm teaching, uh, in a big way without checking with me.
Mm.
And but I don't, it's not a legal thing, and
But
um
that's just to make sure the information's right. You want them to check in with you to make sure that they're sharing it correctly, or what's the reason?
yeah, that's the main reason is to
Uh-huh.
make sure like if you learn something here and then you want to go off and teach it, like there are people that I have taught that are teachers, and and my relationship with that is, let me know if you want to use some of my PowerPoints and I'll send them to you. That's my relationship to that, just in general. But those are always people that I have great respect for,
Mm,
and feel like they have respect for what I'm teaching. It's just to have them respect, just have some respect for, okay, there's a teacher, there's knowledge, and you can take that knowledge and go do things, but it's really good to kind of honor your teacher also, honor where things have come from. And it's not that it's important to me or for my ego. There's just roots, right? They're
mm,
roots of where things come from. And if I'm a teacher, I want my students to know what my roots are, because we're connected to something that's much older and bigger than
Mm.
me. And so to kind of keep those roots alive, where did this come from? And there might be many roots. People study with a bunch of teachers and pull it together in their own way. I don't know if I'm being articulate about that.
that seems really clear to me too. And
Hmm.
and Chinese
Okay.
medicine is that, right? I mean, so many different roots coming together to put out these different aspects of Chinese medicine comes draws on so many different areas. And I feel like, yeah, that's the two things, right? If you're not corrupting the information and you have respect for the tradition, then and it's valuable, then those three things, the information should go out. It should go out to try and help
Then
other
I want to
people.
share it. I want to share it. Yeah. And,
But
and
if it
I,
gets
I,
corrupted, then that branch may fall off and not be able to help others. So, mm,
yeah, yeah, but I also think that we can't control what people do with it.
right.
Like it goes out, and there might be ways that will get corrupted that we can't maintain control over. I think that just is part of it as
Yeah.
well. I think as teachers, if we hold it in our heart in a really respectful way and pass it on in a way that is filled with love and appreciation for it, that just in general, that's going to be how it's going to be passed on. And outside of that, we don't have control over it. So you just let go of people
Right.
that don't do it well or something, or what, I don't
I
know.
think it
Do you
won't
know what
be
I mean?
I think it won't
I
be as
do.
clinically effective too, right? If it gets corrupted, if it kind of get loses the root, I feel like so it will be a little bit self-limiting also.
I agree with that.
Hmm.
Mm,
Yeah. We don't have to worry about that. And we don't have to, we can't really control it. So it's a
right.
waste to worry about it. And it would be self-limiting. I agree.
Mm.
Yeah.
I was shocked to hear that there's people in our profession that have their students sign
Hmm.
NDAs. That was just shocking to me. So,
Yeah.
anyways, thanks so much for discussing it because, yeah, I mean, it seems antithetical to Chinese medicine, which is always just building on, building on, building on, to try and sequester part of that and not let it build upon itself. I don't know. I was really surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to threaten students, if they talk about it, is pretty shocking too.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, maybe I'm, you know, getting quite a bit older, and when when students of mine, like there's a student of mine in Denmark who's now teaching his own herb program in Denmark in Danish, um and I feel that it feels like a jewel on my crown. You know, that it makes my heart swell, and it makes me feel at peaceful, because I'm not going to be around, and like, oh, people have taken what I'm doing and they're helping it live on.
Mm.
It's just like such a good feeling. And of course they're going to do it in their own way,
Yeah.
And um, and that's how it should be. That's
Mm.
exactly how it should be. Yeah.
I have two thoughts about that. First, I heard this quote, you can never measure the limit of a teacher's influence, right? It just reverberates out and out. And I thought that was so
Hmm.
beautiful. And then,
Hmm.
yeah, as long as they're respecting the tradition, trying to do the best they can with the information, and then trying to help other people with it, I think it's just it's only good as it goes
Yeah.
out. But again,
Exactly.
if people try and pull that in, um, yeah, that branch is going to fall off.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
scarcity versus abundance mindset,
It's such
trying.
it would be from such a scared place to do
Hmm.
that,
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we think of the principles of Chinese medicine relative to the natural world, which is what our classical texts talk about, the Huangdi Neijing, it's a natural principle, isn't it, about growth and about the way that nature works is with cooperation and generosity and teachers come and new teachers come, they die and new
Hmm.
teachers come. It's like it's constantly evolving and nourishing. Each generation nourishes the next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you were saying with the cycle, right? The Leo Jing, right? It has to keep moving.
Hmm.
You can't fix the sun in one spot, otherwise everything's going to scorch, right? So, yeah,
Yep.
that's it's foolish to try, right? It's foolish to try.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Toby.
Mm. Thanks so much for spending time with us, Sharon, on office hours.
Yes,
It's
thank
a real
you.
pleasure to spend a little bit of time with you. And yeah, thanks for making the time.
So
My
much.
deepest pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, everyone, take care. Bye for now.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Good night.